folks. I'm Katie.
I'm Vinny. This is Learn Real Good.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm very sure. Should I not be sure? Is there some question as to whether or not?
What's anything, man?
Whoa.
That reminds me of philosophy. I did a minor in philosophy.
All right.
Do you know that in my undergrad?
Yeah, we've talked about this.
Well,
yeah.
I don't know.
I remember
We've
it.
had too many conversations.
That's true.
Anyway, it was all stuff like that.
Yeah.
Are
What
we
is it?
alive?
Yeah. How could we know if we know something?
I mean, that's what I think, therefore I am is all about, right? How
Well, then-
could I have thoughts if I don't exist?
Well, then that should have been the end of philosophy right there. Just like, I think,
Case
therefore I am.
closed.
Oh, yeah, he solved it.
Nailed it.
Nailed it.
It was a whole book, I think, he wrote.
It's one sentence.
I know.
Yeah.
I read the book. I don't remember what else is in there. It's a lot of navel
Yeah,
gazing.
Just Descartes, just put that one sentence down, mic drop at the
He
end.
put Descartes before the horse.
All
So this
right,
is a
yes, this
science-
is not a philosophy podcast.
Thank goodness. I remember very little of that. It's really not affected my life. Yeah, it's a science comedy podcast. Sorry, philosophy majors. Where we shoot the breeze, share some facts, and then after that, the marquee part of the show,
Yes.
we have a guest. I'm very excited.
I am super
about our guest.
excited.
Well, I'm equally excited. Let's
Good. It's not a
compete.
contest.
It isn't.
We're the same
We're
amount
the
of
same
excitement.
amount of excited. Equal.
Equal.
Yes, exactly.
Perfect.
Do you-
Perfectly balanced.
Now, I hope you have a good fact, because I'm in the mood for a good fact.
I've got a
I need to be
reasonably good
picky.
fact.
A reasonably good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are
Are you ready for it?
I think I can
It's
handle
a tasty morsel of a fact.
it. Ooh.
Yeah.
Is it about food?
No.
Oh, go ahead.
So, one of my favorite topics. It's the moon.
You love the moon.
I love the moon.
I don't think I knew that before this podcast,
It's
but
pretty
half
cool.
of, conservatively, half of
my
your facts are
are
about the
moon related.
Yeah.
It's probably true.
Yeah.
Well, I just find it fascinating. It's up there,
Yeah.
but it's a giant ball of rock,
It's
and we
made
can
of
walk on
cheese.
it. No, it's not made of. We've had this discussion. Well,
Yeah.
recently,
Okay.
supercomputers.
Ooh.
They've turned their computational power to the moon.
Now, I have a question before we get into
Yes.
this. What makes a computer a supercomputer?
It operates at a very high rate. It can do a
Oh,
lot
okay.
of like millions and billions and maybe trillions at this stage. I don't know what the highest calculations are.
Googilians.
But many calculations per second, so you can do very detailed, accurate simulations.
Are they rare, or is like my home
They're
computer a
very
supercomputer?
expensive. I mean, your home computer would have been a supercomputer like 25
Right.
years ago.
For sure
right?
it would have been.
So now the supercomputers
Okay.
are like, the supercomputers today are now like parallel. They're like 300 PlayStation 5s in a big box.
That's like the horsepower for computers is
It's number of
PlayStation powers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the thing about these consoles. So, did you know for a while the PlayStation 4 was a military restricted item because the graphics chip could be used also to guide missiles. It was
Whoa!
it was so advanced. It could do so many computations. So, when you're doing missile to missile technology, you have to be able to have a camera on the other missile, calculate where it's heading, intercept that missile, do the calculation to where to fire your missile rockets to intercept that other missile. That calculation has to be done live. It's not like, oh, I'm going to figure this out and send it later. When the missile's headed for you, you have to
Okay.
solve that equation now. And so it may have been the PlayStation 3, but when it first came out, it was so powerful that the military had to restrict exports on it.
Whoa, how cruel.
Yeah.
Everyone just wanted to play Guitar Hero.
That's right. We use it for like, Donkey Kong or whatever. So
Moon.
computers.
Right.
In units of gaming consoles is a thing, and so
Okay.
you build these computers by you don't build one mega computer, you stack hundreds of regular computers, and it's just cheaper and
Get to the moon.
just as effective. So using these supercomputers, we can make really cool calculations.
Oh.
And one of the calculations that's recently been done
Okay.
is the formation of the moon. How did it get formed?
I actually know this.
Tell me.
Well, you culture milk
Yes. Keep going. I want to
and you
hear
age it. You
Yes.
add some bacteria cultures, age it, get the ions just
right.
correct, and
Yes.
then put in the fridge.
Yeah.
And then you have
For how
a
long?
cheese moon.
All
A
right.
week.
A week. All right,
Yeah.
great. Well, you've made cheese, but not the moon.
Okay.
So to make the moon,
Right.
what's one of the mysteries about the moon is that it's made up of the same stuff as the Earth.
Right.
And when something foreign hits the Earth,
Mm-hmm.
usually it's not made of the exact same stuff as the Earth. And when two things collide, usually the other body kind of glances off, or because it's got a different density, it separates out. So one of the mysteries is like, why is the moon made of the same stuff as the Earth?
Right. I thought people thought it was a chunk of the Earth.
Yes, but how do we show that? How do we how do we prove it, or at least have some kind of model for how this could happen?
Is the answer supercomputers?
The answer is supercomputers. So with one of the most detailed supercomputer models that has ever been built, they've run a model of the moon, and they've found some really interesting things that fit what we know. They were like, previous models had a hard time matching the composition of the moon, matching the orbit of the moon, or like the degree at which it is angled. There's a lot of details about the moon that are like, it's not straightforward problem to solve. You're like, all right, just do this, do that, and you have a moon. The way we do have a moon.
Or we'd all have one.
Yeah, everybody would have a moon. But to create an accurate model of how we get a moon has eluded us for a while. And the supercomputer, this latest model, has done a much better job. And one of the surprising things about it is that the collision between this other body and the Earth, and this other body has a name, Theia, Theia. Theia, they've named this mysterious body. I don't know where it comes from.
There's going to be a lot of Theas being born soon.
Yeah, exactly. Well, one of the surprising things about this collision between Earth and Theia is that after it, within a few hours, the moon is born. People used to think it was a question of like weeks or months, but hours later we have a moon orbiting around.
How many pounds and ounces when it was born?
It was about 7 pounds 6 ounces.
Classic.
Little baby moon. Yeah, I'm a moon. So yeah, that was one of the really cool things, that the moon was formed, according to this model, it seems to be very accurate, in hours, which surprises me because normally this kind of stuff takes a while to settle down.
I just realized you said eluded. We could have said illunared us.
That's a good one.
Thank you.
All
Is
right.
it good now they said it minutes later?
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool fact. I'm glad you found another moon fact.
There you go.
I thought you were going to run out.
Next season, 10 moon facts, if I can.
I like it. I'm going to come in with some moon facts too. Let's try to make it 20. Okay. Well, I have a fact for you.
I would like to receive your fact.
Okay. This is a fact that's affected you.
It's affected me?
Yes. Have you noticed, Vinny? And I know the answer is yes. Have you noticed
Yeah.
some people seem to be more attractive to mosquitoes than others?
Yes. My son is one of them. He's very attractive to mosquitoes.
On a particularly hilarious, sad camping trip this summer, the mosquitoes were really bad for Vinny's son. He got literally hundreds of bites.
Yeah, no one else got as
I don't
half
think
as
I had
many.
one.
Yeah.
It's not funny. I'm
No,
sorry.
it's-
Sorry, Vinny's kid. But that's the point, right? Some people are more attracted to mosquitoes than others. And what are the classic go-tos for why some people are more attractive to mosquitoes?
Makeup, mosquito makeup.
Yes, mosquito makeup.
Delicious blood.
Delicious blood, yes.
Having a Zika virus that causes you to smell citrusy.
Oh, I cannot believe you remember that. Well, also CO2 and warmth. These are things.
Sure.
Okay, well. New study found that mosquitoes are attracted to people who have more carboxylic acid on their skin.
Oh.
It doesn't mean the other factors aren't in play,
Sure.
but this is another prominent one we didn't know of before.
Amazing.
So how do you get carboxylic acid on your skin?
I have no idea.
Primarily through bacteria on your skin eating sebum. Do you know what sebum is?
Is that the oil that comes out?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So it's what your hair follicles secrete. It's not the sweat. It comes from a separate gland, and it's like an oily secretion to moisturize your hair and skin. So
Bacteria comes along.
eat them,
Yum, 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 yum.
and they produce carboxylic acid as a waste product. And for whatever reason, we don't know why. That's an
Mosquitoes are
attractive
like,
factor. Yeah, and it's very mysterious to scientists why mosquitoes would prefer one person than another, because for all their testing, any blood will do. Like, there's no signs that particular blood types or is more effective.
Interesting. I wonder if like early mosquitoes had a preferred animal that specifically had a lot of carboxylic acid. I don't know how to say it.
Carboxylic acid.
Carboxylic acid.
Carboxylic.
Carbacidic. I don't know.
C acid.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how they did this study. So what they did was
Some poor sucker.
No humans. No, thankfully, no. So basically, a bunch of different people rubbed nylon, like wore nylon shirts, sort of like the t-shirt experiment, and got like their skin goo on it.
That's the technical
And they
term.
just measured a bunch of variables in each person, like, personality traits, carboxylic acid on the skin. They just measured a bunch of stuff, and then they would do like a 2 for trial with the mosquitoes. So they put mosquitoes, and they had to like pick a date. Do you want this box or this box? And they tried to find like what do these boxes that the mosquitoes chose have
like
in common?
A/B testing for mosquitoes.
Yeah. So then they were like, okay, is this real? So they found they made a strain of mosquitoes that genetically couldn't perceive carboxylic acid.
That is a specific mosquito.
I know. Yeah. It couldn't perceive acids. So I don't know if it was all acids for whatever reason. And they still picked, not as often, but they still picked those boxes. So something else is going on. It's not just the carboxylic acid, but it's sort of a new thing that mosquitoes are into. But,
I wonder if we can use that for mosquito repellents.
Well, that's always the hope, right? Because mosquitoes are the animal that's killed more humans than any other animal.
Those jerks. I hate them.
It's, I try to defend all living things. I think all life has an intrinsic value to some extent, but would we really miss mosquitoes? Let's be honest.
The bats, probably not.
There's other bugs.
Yeah, eat other bugs, bats.
This is for you, bats. We're calling you out. Eat something else.
Yeah, because we want to get rid of the
Think
mosquitoes.
of us.
Report. Set collection. Discrepancy straight line. Moth said. Meet Moth. Moth travels everywhere and everywhen in search of, often deadly, discrepancies, and tries to make sense of the briefs she gets from collection. There were holes in the brief, I don't like that. The Moth Collection Podcast. It's science fiction with a little bit of horror. It's weird and funny and romantic, and there won't be another season. 14 episodes, and that's it, people. Available wherever you get your podcasts. Presented by Podcavern.
Okay.
All right.
That's enough of that. I felt that way about 9 minutes ago, but for real, that's it.
For real. That's
okay, well, we have a guest.
I love
it. I have the distinct honor of introducing our guest this week. It is Alexa Scott. Alexa Scott's MSc thesis investigated species coexistence in periodic environments. She successfully defended last August and will be pursuing her PhD this January at the University of Guelph's Integrative Biology. Alexa loves to play the piano and saxophone, ride horses, and has a lifelong passion of hers to ride through the Rocky Mountains in search of wild horses. Please join me in welcoming Alexa Scott to the podcast.
Alexa. Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, so you just defended. So are you like relaxing now? Is this like your free
time?
Yes,
I am trying to relax. I decided to take a semester off before continuing my PhD in January. So, yeah.
Very wise.
Yeah, well, welcome. We get to talk about it some more.
No break tonight. That's so smart, actually. I think it's underdone grad students.
Yeah, people go
breaks.
back to back.
There can be a lot of pressure sometimes to feel to like, no breaks.
Keep going. Alexa, tell us a little bit about this field of study. Like, what area does this fall under?
At the University of Guelph, I'm in integrated biology, and particularly I'm a theoretical ecologist, where I'm fascinated by how we could study anything using mathematical models. So I really like biology, wildlife coexistence, and applying math to help species coexistence.
Whoa,
very cool.
That's very cool. So you mentioned species coexistence in periodic environments. Before we get into periodic environments, do you want to talk a bit about like why can't all species coexist? Like, let's say I have these two bears. Why can't these two bears living very similar lifestyles in the same place just be friends? Why is coexistence an issue in general?
In static environments, environments with no periodicity, no cycles, just stable environments, basically we cannot all coexist. Like, we'll try to coexist, but you're always in competition. Even think of yourself in high school, middle school. Sure, we were all friends, but we're all thinking, oh my God, I hope I do better on this test. And my partner's always like wanting the better grade. And so that same thing happens in nature, where species from mammals, animals, to birds, to even like plants, they're all competing for resources to survive, basically survivability. And so they compete with each other over like available resources, because there just isn't like enough resources to
Right.
sustain everything. So each species is not the optimum. We all have trade-offs. And so this is kind of getting into a little my research, but we
Yeah.
all have trade-offs where, okay, we might be better at obtaining resources, but we're not as good at protecting our resources. So I'm not sure the coexistence there, where they're constantly in competition. Everyone's constantly in competition, and the factor just has to do with their niches where they live. Do they live right beside each other? Are they overlapping, or do they live like a distance apart where they could both kind of coexist with a little interaction, or are they both in the same spot competing for the same
Right.
resources?
And for the same grades.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that really opened up a Pandora's box of panic in my head, remembering. I remember, like, they used to call out your name in order of grade.
Whoa, that
Yeah.
I'd never had that.
Oh, yeah, it was very embarrassing.
That's very
personal.
Streets of the Wild there. Like, look out.
So are you saying then, Alexa, like two things that have like the same niche that want like the exact same things, they can't typically coexist because one will just be better than the other one?
Well, if we have like if both species like have the same carrying capacity where they have the same amount of like available resources and the same like competitive advantage over the other, there will always be a slight difference between like their growth rates, and then we'll eventually always wind up in eventuality towards competing in competitive exclusion.
That's why invasive species are not cool.
No, they're not. They particularly they seem to be they come in and they're just really favored, and so our native species have a hard time competing with them.
I mean, we can't hate invasives. It's like hating the brainiac in your class. Like, do we hate them just because they're better at everything?
Well, we can quietly resent them.
Yes. Or invasive species.
So yeah, you like your big invasive
I studied
species,
invasive species, as you know. Not that I'm for them,
but I guess at some point you reach stasis, right? Like you have competition, and then do you reach some kind of like equilibrium between them, or like at least evolving, modulating equilibrium?
Yeah, just depending on different parameter sets, we can either have whether two species can coexist with each other, where they might share some resources, but they have like other food sources like separate from each other. They could coexist in the same environment. Others can competitively exclude each other, just being one competitively exclude the other, or we can have another case of contingent coexistence where the
That's a great term.
where say there's a really dominant native competitor and we have an invasive competitor coming in, and just we'll have always an unstable equilibrium in the middle, and so always, no matter what, one species will competitively exclude the other, and that's kind of based on initial densities of the population.
Interesting. So let's introduce this other half of your topic, which is periodic environments. Let's just talk about what does that mean before we tie this whole bundle together.
What's going on there?
So periodic environments, we could think of them as summer and winter. We know that that's constantly a cycle of where we have our good times and our bad times, where summer's like really lush, flourishing. We have lots of nutrients. Winters known as our like poor times, where survivability is harsh and many species are kind of hibernating or they migrate. And so what I started off thinking about summer and winter in that view, but then I kind of took my thesis to a more broader approach and kind of viewed it in all periodic environments where we could have day and night. How, Vinny, you're talking about the moon.
Yeah.
Interesting. or even and we can see these periodicities on any kind of time scale from seconds within our own like immune systems, where we have pH levels fluctuating, and we can see these to like multi-decadal cycles. So
Whoa. Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, I'm just thinking of like tides have like a different periodicity, cicadas have a periodicity, but I guess that's not environmental.
no, tide like water,
Yeah.
crabs competing for space, different. Well, we can find these environments like practically everywhere we look.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting, like the diversity of scale there, right? You've
Yeah.
got some of those things change on the order of milliseconds, and some of them are, like I just read a paper about how mangroves can change in their density based on a lunar cycle that's every 9 years. So like there's a
Yeah.
very slow cycle that can affect things.
Amazing.
Interesting. So what types of, are you looking at like a vast array of periodic environments in your research, or did you like hone in on a few different types?
Well, I guess my research is pretty general and could be applied to like a vast array. So basically, we're able to develop a mathematical model where we take the Lotka-Volterra competition equation, and it's an equation which can predict whether we get coexistence, competitive exclusion, or contingent coexistence in static environments, so no periodicities. So what I was able to was incorporate all of those parameter sets from the original Lotka-Volterra model and incorporate it between our two different seasons. So we have our productive season parameter sets than our less productive season parameter sets. And incorporating all those parameters, I was able to actually develop the same kind of model or isocline approximation, just with this periodicity in it.
Whoa.
And what's even fascinating was we were on top of that able to incorporate the change in periodic length. Okay. So if you think about, have you noticed our summers seem to be getting hotter and our winters are just not that intense anymore? So kind of with climate change, our summers are getting longer. And so we're able to kind of maybe model climate change by increasing the length of our productive periods and instantaneously getting or tracking species coexistence.
Whoa, that's super cool. So can you say at this point, like, what would the general predictions be for climate change? I mean, you probably have so many parameters that can change, but let's invent a scenario where you have these two organisms, these two different bears.
Yes,
and right now they're fighting each other. They're very similar niches. And if we were to let them keep punching each other, eventually one would drive the other out of existence and competitively exclude them if they had another 100 years. But during that 100 years, we have climate change, and that's affecting the productive season. Do you know in this scenario how that would affect that relationship?
Yeah, who wins, polar bear or grizzly bear?
Yes, our polar bear or grizzly bear. Well, based on their we would naturally assume that, okay, our maybe winters are getting shorter. So maybe in some approaches based on their different parameter sets, in some instances, our polar bears will be competitively excluded. In other cases, we found that if both our species, polar bear and grizzly bear, were able to coexist in our productive period and less productive period, with the implications of periodicity, seasonality in it, this could actually drive both species to competitive exclusion, where our grizzly bear competitively excludes our polar bear.
Sorry, polar bear.
Or in instances where both our polar bear and grizzly bear competitively exclude each other at our polar bear dominates in our less productive periods, grizzly bear dominates in our productive periods. Well, without periodicity, coexistence would not be possible. So they're able to coexist.
They take turns.
Yeah. So it's depending on the type of species we look at, their different parameter sets.
Wow. So what types of organisms were in your punch bowl? Like how many did you have mammals? Did you have fish? Like what What was your mix of
Well,
organisms?
I am in a lab who really likes fish.
Oh.
They love everything they do is with
You
fish.
say that as though
Um,
you are not one of them.
well, at first it's like,
You've
oh,
learned to love the
okay,
fish.
you really like the fish, is okay. But then 2 years after, I was out, yes, catching fish and loving it.
There it is.
One
There
of
it is.
them.
One
One
of
of them.
fish.
So some fish we were looking at was smallmouth bass, productive summer specialist, and then our lake trout, who is typically thought of as our seasonal generalist, who kind of does better during the summertime, but still is able to maintain productivity in the less productive winter periods.
It's the polar bear, grizzly bear of
Yeah.
the lake.
What were some major differences when you're looking at these relationships between something like a fish and a mammal? Were there sort of
Do you not know the
major
difference between a
things?
fish and a mammal, Katie?
In species
Oh, in
coexistence
species,
and
oh, yeah.
periodicity,
Okay.
Vinny?
Well, major, I guess mine, I kind of like had the idea and kind of, okay, well, in order to kind of talk about it, we didn't necessarily go into looking at the specific parameter sets of specific species, but we just had some ideal general species in mind. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that's for the next group of scientists.
Yeah.
You can't do everything.
Someone else can handle that one.
So, what do you think, Alexa, if you're a fish? I'm going to make you be a fish.
Hypothetical.
Yeah.
If you were a fish.
Yeah, we're not.
Which
we're not-
fish?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
fair enough.
yeah.
You're a smallmouth bass. Okay.
Okay.
Now, you are in competition with another fish. Okay.
Classic smallmouth.
It's classic smallmouth bass. Would it be better for you to beat up the other fish and outcompete it, or find a way to sort of separate your resources so you can both coexist? Like sort of a prisoner's dilemma.
Is there like a benefit to like this mutualism kind of thing?
Well,
All I want to do is survive. And
Right.
the lake trout, I share a lot of similar resources with the lake trout. So what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
I like that you're getting into the role play.
Yeah. I'm very believable as a smallmouth bass.
People can't see, but you have the gills.
No.
You would want them all to coexist and find different resources, and sure, they all have like, okay, another type 2 resource, a second choice they could go to, but maybe that's not as plentiful, or that's not their first choice. So
Wow.
when the first choice is available,
Yeah.
you wouldn't want to just grab it. You see a delicious chocolate sitting there out in front of you, you would choose the veggies.
That's a type 2. That's a type 3 maybe.
I use a very similar example with my students where I'm like, if there's pizza and salad, you're eating the pizza. You only eat salad if the pizzas run out, right? We all agree with that, right?
I have a question now. Like, what is there an example anywhere where there are more than like 2 things that coexist? Like, is it always just like the 2 is like a maximum number of, like, it's 1, maybe 2, but is there a thing that's like 3 or 4?
Yes. Well, there are many mathematical models which do incorporate like 3-4 species coexisting. But these models of like the Lotka-Volterra model, the 2 species competition model, what we're trying to get out is its simplicity, where we could basically break it down to like understand, okay, the simple point to understand these dynamics. And once we get a grasp of that, maybe we could apply it to more deeper and more complicated models.
Now, Alexa, Lotka-Volterra has come up several times. I think we need to discuss.
We need to go deeper.
What is
Right.
Lotka-Volterra all about?
that-
Enlighten
well-
Vinny.
Yeah, is that one person's 2 person's name? Was that like
Well,
2
two
people got
people,
married and they
so-
hyphenated?
No, they didn't
That we know
Yeah.
of.
get married. I forget their first names, but Mr. Lotka and Mr. Volterra. So it was actually around the 1920s 20s when they actually started developing their coexistence model for coexistence in these static environments. This simple model has been used by many ecologists over these past 100 years
That's a good model.
to just kind of discover, well, what if we change this parameter? Okay, what does it do? What if we change growth rates? What if we change death rates of species? So it's been used over these 100 years. I find it fascinating how now able to use basically the same parameter set and equations, but now able to like use like very similar coexistent the model in periodic environments.
That's very cool. So now you've come up with this model. Now how do you validate it? Like, how do you like, okay, I've got this equation. Then you're like, I'm going to go change the growth rates in the field and see if it matches my equation. Or like, or are you fitting your model to data that you already have?
Well, the model has been fitted with data that people have had then, and that's why they know it works so well. But my research is kind of like an approach. And so we are able to run simulations between each season. So where we start off with our summers, then go to our winters, summer, winter, and run that over like 1,000 years until our species, their growth rates or their densities reach a equilibrium, a stable state of either coexistence or competitive exclusion. And what I found with my approximation, my approach, was that my seasonal isocline was able to fit remarkably well with the simulations.
That's amazing. I like this term competitive exclusion. It's a really polite way to say you've kicked someone out. It's like, I'm going to competitively exclude you from my seat.
You're going to use that a lot.
I am going to use it. Yeah.
So would you be able to generalize, Alexa, whether coexistence is more likely in periodic environments versus static environments? Like, is there something about periodicity that almost like leaves more niche room, sort of? Like, even if these two things want the same resources, if one's sort of more active during the day, one's more active at night, it sort of leaves more room for them to share and care?
Yeah, I think that kind of what you're saying is with the seasonality, just between two species that would competitively exclude each other given any static environments. Well, if we only have their favorable period in there for like only short duration of time and then we switch over, well, none of them, sure, they start okay dominating a little bit, but they can't fully reach until the next period switches. So I think that switch in trade-offs between the two species allows them to coexist.
That's really cool. I mean, you could even imagine a species that does well during good times, then a species that does well in bad times, and then a generalist who does well and kind of okay in both, and having like a 3-body stable equilibrium between these.
Well, it's sort of what happens with plants, right? There's a sort of classical way of dividing plants into one of 3 sort of life history strategies. Like, you can be really good in stressful environments, which is like drought and fire and all this crazy stuff, or you can be really good in environments that are constantly being disturbed, so you grow really fast. Or if you're not good in either, you're a good competitor. And so that sort of explains patterns of plant
distribution
replacement. Yeah, like if you think about like you're going for a hike in the forest and you think about what are the plants that grow close to the path versus further in the forest, right? That has to do with proximity to disturbance.
Interesting.
So Alexa, we know you love Mr. Lotka and Mr. Volterra's model. What are
it's like a Willy Wonka factor.
When I think of Lotka Volterra, my brain goes into snowshoe hair and lynx cycling.
Okay.
What are some other hot models? What are some other like theoretical models?
Theoretical models.
Yes.
Theoretical models.
There are so many models. There's the Rosansky-MacArthur model.
Ooh, what's
which
that?
Tell us that. What makes that so hot?
You could model the competitor and the resource kind of. So how much like the predator prey model. So also another story, Lotka Volterra. But you could just model how much resources there are and how much predators there are. And then you could say, well, if I have this much predators, then I'll have fewer resources. And then when my resources get very little, then my predators will drop. And until my predators like drop and die off very few, then my resources will grow in abundance again, get very large. So there's always this cycle that we see in nature.
Classic.
Many
Classic.
and
That's like me and Halloween candies.
It's not much of a cycle.
Yeah.
The Halloween candy shows up and then
Yeah.
it's gone.
And then when it's gone, I have to go buy more. And so the Halloween candies
How did I
replenish.
not see that coming?
And then there's more resources for me to consume.
So
And how long does that last? Until
Not very long. It's
the periods speed up.
yeah,
as
the
time
periodicity
progresses.
gets smaller and smaller. But then the Christmas season is upon us, and then there's a
Yes.
whole other periodicity.
You're right.
Different kind of resources.
Different equation.
Different equation.
Different
It's
equation.
the Halloween
It's
holiday.
The Vinny Katie equation. Alexa, how did you get into these equations?
Yeah.
How did you get into theoretical?
Did you just wake up one day and be like, I'm
biology?
going to model this?
Theoretical. Well, always from like very young, I grew up on a farm and still live on my farm. So I've been around animals my entire life.
Right.
And I remember when I was like very little collecting like frogs from like caterpillars, insects, always. So I've always loved animals, but I've always been really good at math. So my mom always told me, oh, do something with your gift. Just make sure you always do something. So I always wanted to do something where I can help wildlife, but through math. And so I never really knew, like, oh, I always wanted to be like an environmental scientist, but it was always like a huge gap. And I did not know kind of how to get there, even until like in my third year of my undergrad, where I then met this prof. I was in his class, Dr. McCann. And first day he comes in and says, hi, I did my PhD in math and I brought it over to ecology. And I was like, whoa!
Say more about that.
And then just like talking, how can I do this? And so we just got to talking, and then he took me on for a summer, gave me a job basically to learn how to be an theoretical ecologist. And then I continued into my undergrad fourth year. And I did a undergrad thesis with him, and I really liked my thesis and I wanted to continue to develop it. So I developed it into my master's, and that's where I'm just currently finishing and about to publish it very soon.
That's
So
exciting.
Stay
really
tuned.
excited about that.
Wow, congrats.
And so you're pursuing a PhD. Is that also with Kevin
Yeah,
McCann?
so that's with the same lab.
Amazing.
Very supportive. I love working.
Yeah.
with
I mean,
them.
that's a really good sign,
Yeah, it sounds
right?
like you found your niche.
Oh, stop it.
My niche of people.
Watch out, Alexa. Vinny's going to be a new student in Kevin's lab, and he's going to compete
No,
with you.
I'm going to get excluded pretty
Yes.
quickly.
Yeah. I think Alexa's got you beat there. Yeah, I mean, and Kevin McCann's sort of famous. Like I've cited him 1,000 times. He's sort of very famous for theoretical ecology.
Yeah.
Just even
And
in
so I'm
casual
just-
conversation.
Yeah, I am still like shocked of how I got into his lab, or like been able to like all this support that him and his lab's given me. So
It's not everyone who has those two
Yeah.
skill sets or two passions for math and biology, right? So it's a sounds like a very good match.
Yeah, great chi-square on that.
I taught chi-squares today. It's amazing that came up. Oh, wow. So you also love music. So you want to talk a bit about your
Yeah,
music? You like to play
I'm,
instruments?
yeah, I from very young I started playing the piano, and I play just like pop songs.
That's
and,
great.
And then even love to just like hear a pop song and then learn it and play it. So yeah, the piano. And then in high school I picked up the saxophone, and I love playing at like any type of concert that I can
That's
play
awesome.
at. Throughout my undergrad university, I played in the Guelph Jazz Band.
Oh, cool.
Yes.
And
That's
then
awesome.
I love playing like piano for like, I don't know, friends' weddings.
Oh yeah,
So,
you must be great at
yeah.
parties.
I'll share an anecdote with Alexa. When I was in high school, I basically went to stack my CVs. I was like involved in everything. And I played the trombone. It was pretty good. And I was in the jazz band, but I do not have a jazz sensibility, I will say. And so I was mostly there to just play the notes, but every song would have solos. And I could not do it because
The teacher would put you on the spot, right?
Because you had to like feel it, and I felt so phony.
You don't feel
anything. I was
anything.
not feeling it. And
I love
used
the solos. I love just
Oh, where were
going out
you,
there.
Alexa? We would have been best friends. I kept having to like push my like, what do you call that? The lectern.
The music stand?
Yeah, the music stand to like hide my face because he'd like point at you to do the solo, and I hated it
It's
so
hard to
much.
hide the trombone.
But just my face. I didn't want to make eye contact. I could have just pointed
I
to
think-
Alexa.
I think in choirs, I was told that I had to blend in more.
Oh.
How do you blend in when you're such a star?
That's it.
Not possible for you, Alexa. And so it's your dream to ride through
Horses?
the Rockies on in search of wild
looking
horses?
for horses?
Yeah, well, horses have been a part of my life, my entire life. Grew up on farm, always had horses. I ride dressage, and for people who don't know what dressage is, it's kind of like horse ballet.
Yes.
So I've always had horses in my life, and loving like wildlife and everything. I always love the horses in the Rockies or the wild Mustangs.
So
up
are
in the
there
foothills.
wild horses in the Rockies? What?
Well, yeah, you will see documents of these wild horses and in like the Alberta foothills and
Very cool.
going across. So, yeah, I would absolutely love to one day go down there.
That sounds
And
amazing.
That's so
yeah,
beautiful.
I have heard from a friend that there's a place called Anchor D that's in Alberta. So next summer I'm coming.
You're ready. You're
Coming
ready.
for you, horses.
We've seen a dressage horse up close.
Oh yes, we had a friend who raised trained
Trained dressage horses.
And
That was the profession.
And it was really funny because like we went to the stable and there's like all these like
Regular horses.
crappy horses, just regular horses, and then we saw this like fancy professional horse, and it looked like a dinosaur.
Yeah, it looked like a king. It looked like majesty.
You bowed.
Yeah, I had to acknowledge this horse's superiority.
They carry very, very high perfection.
Yeah. High status horse.
And can I say attractive?
Yeah, you could say attractive. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Those dressage horses.
Yeah.
They do something.
Next level.
Yeah, next level
Very
horse.
stunning.
Now, Alexa, where do you see Alexa in 10 years? Like, do you have, I know you already have to, you're focused on the PhD coming next, but where
And the horses.
And the horses. But where do you see your career going?
Well, I guess I would love to continue my research, and there are other areas which focus with math and ecology, like such as NASA or the Ministry of Environment, kind of thinking those areas. So would maybe look for a job there, but always I must have horses in my life. So
Yes.
they're
We
always
support
going to
this.
be in my life.
Wherever there's horses, there's math.
And wherever there's horses and math, there's
Alexa.
Alexa.
Nailed it. Alexa, that's all the time we have. Thank you so much.
Yes.
This is so wonderful.
Well, thank you so very much for having me. It's been an honor. Thank you.
What a
Awesome.
great
And best
chat.
of luck. Go find those
Yeah,
horses.
You got this.
Will do.
How cool is that?
That was amazing.
That was really cool.
Before this moment, had you known much about mathematical ecology?
I mean,
Vinny?
only in like
In passing.
only in that like I assumed some math was involved. Like I didn't have any information about the details. But yeah, obviously there's going to be models, and that modeling requires like math. You gotta write some equations to make the model.
Yeah, there's sort of like the three main-ish streams in ecology, like the
Okay.
experimental ecologists,
Okay.
the field ecologists,
Yeah.
the math ecologists. And there's some
Okay.
crossover and
Okay.
mixing and matching, but
That makes sense.
it's a whole prominent group.
Yeah. Does anybody do like all three, or do you have to like kind of pick one of those three?
I mean, we're all doing all three
A
to
little
some
bit,
extent,
right.
you know.
You have to have an awareness of all three for sure.
Sure. I mean, like some of my chapters were experimental, some were field, and some
Right.
were math, were
Right.
statistics.
Right.
Not modeling, but well, I guess it was kind of modeling. So I think a lot of us do have a finger in each pie
Yeah.
to tackle these, because you want to Just the same way you want to gather multiple lines of evidence for any
Right.
problem, right? You want to
Right.
use multiple techniques to understand something. Lots of handwork today.
You're doing a lot of gestures for a podcast. That's okay.
Won't stop.
No, it can't stop.
Can't stop. I want to turn this into a hit TV show one day.
One day.
Well, Vinny,
Katie,
we learned a lot today.
we did learn a lot today.
We learned about the moon.
We learned
Some
about
more.
the moon.
There's still more to know
yeah,
about the moon.
Yeah.
And mosquitoes.
And mosquito scents and oils. the essential oils of a mosquito's life.
And we learned a lot about
about-
computation
yeah.
ecology and coexistence models.
That's a cool, like, I didn't know that was like a technical term in ecology.
And you learned about Mr. Lotka and Mr. Volterra.
I learned that there are wild horses in the Rockies. Which
Yes.
kind of, I'll be honest, that blew my mind. That was like, what? Why are there wild horses there?
Yeah, there's a few places. There's some.
I don't think of horses as a wild animal.
They
I really don't. They're
still are
so
in some
domesticated, but yeah, of course.
like there's wild dogs.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. There's islands that have wild horses on them.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen it, so I can't believe it.
That's how you are about most things.
Yeah, lions don't exist.
Australia?
Maybe. No, I've been there, so I know.
Why don't you send people out on our socials, Vinny?
If you want to follow us on social media, you can check us out at LRG Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. Yes, TikTok.
We'll post one day.
We'll get there. And if you'd love to be a guest, or you know someone who would be a guest and could be a guest, send us an email at learnrealgoodpodcast@gmail.com. That's learnrealgoodpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you're a fan of the show, please drop us a 5-star rating and a review. To date, we have one. There's
Yeah.
dozens of us. In fact,
Yes, Katie.
at the time of this recording on this random website, we were rated number 4
in science comedy
in
podcasts.
hundreds of science comedy podcasts that were considered. I don't know
We're
how that
number
happened.
4.
And people are listening.
We're going to climb to number 1 one day. That's the goal. I'm going to be number 1 on that list. I'm going to be the number 1 science
The
comedy
number one
podcast.
podcast, I don't remember the name of it, had like 50,000 followers.
Well, we're getting there.
Oh, okay.
We're on our way.
One
Look,
at a time.
if you're enjoying this podcast, share it with a friend. Tell them to give us a listen. And if they love us,
Share it with an enemy.
Share. If you hate this podcast, share it with an enemy.
All right.
right.
Well, thank you, Vinny.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you, Alexa. And we'll see you next time, folks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.